been on a tearing rush to just get to the tail end of it. They just say it's like a tissue paper, you know. That is the tissue paper that when it is almost at the end, it really goes faster. Someone was saying life is like a tissue paper. It's a roll of tissue paper, right? The thinner it gets, the faster it goes. And that's how life is. Even the older you get, it seems also time really flies. So they say, hello, good morning, and many thanks for joining us here on Morning Prime. I trust that you had a lovely restorative weekend as always, and you're ready for the good week that we have ahead. A lot has been packed into it, of course. Looking forward also to this particular talks that everyone has been gagging for when it comes to peace and stability in the country. And right now, as we were saying, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel where now they can come to the table and talk. But even as they're coming to the table to talk, still, there are demands which are being put on the table, and both sides of the divide are not seeing eye to eye on those demands. First of all, we have Azimio really insisting, and they're not rolling back. They're saying the cost of living has to be the main cog of this conversation, which Kenya Kwanza is starkly denying and saying no. The cost of living does not have to be part of this conversation because the government is working on the cost of living, and evidently, as you can see also, there are some reliefs as we have so far, looking at the price of unga that is going down, that is indicative that something is up their collective slaves. We shall be looking at this and the raft of other issues as well this morning. Also, the sugar is going to be, of course, getting costlier for you. So you might want to think of other ways of how you're going to make sure that your sweet tooth is being accommodated somehow or being looked into as far as the sugar prices is concerned. This morning I'm joined by Richard Onyonka, who is the Senator of Kisii. We'll be joined by also Danson Mungatana, who is the Senator of Tana River. We'll be joined much later as well by also Dr.
Nice talking with you.
Dr. Makalemulu, and also we'll be joined as well by Wilson Susion, who is a politician, to also drive this agenda. But you know the drill, you get to drive the show with me. You can head over to our Twitter handle. Our Twitter handle is at KT News, at KT News KE, and also you can follow me at Dibala Ainear. But let's put this horse into full run by starting to look at the dailies. But before I do that, let me just, of course, extend a hearty welcome to Richard Onyonka, who is joining us this morning. Sir, good morning, good to see you.
Morning, Dibala.
I'm telling you, I can see you're shivering a bit.
It's cold.
cold.
I'm freezing, but it's okay.
It's okay.
I think we'll start dressing.
You need to layer up.
Yes,
so that at least you can beat the cold. But you see, amazingly, they're saying this past month of July, which is now fading off its 31st, has been the hottest month in other parts of the world. And now we are actually out of the global warming. We are into global boiling.
That's true. And I think people need to start, you know, some of these things we talk about, Dibal, you see them in the media, you hear the comments people make. If people are told don't cut forests, immediately guys are cutting forests. You don't know what government policies are. I don't know whether we'll ever learn. That's my worry. I really don't know whether we'll ever learn much from what is commonsensical.
Yeah, so you have a figure that we need a tree cover, forestation in the country, at least we want to be 10%, but still we actually backing up the trees again, so to speak, and we are paring down on what the efforts that we're trying to put forward. Of course, we shall be looking at that as well. But let's see what is fresh off the press this morning. We put the horse into full run by looking at the bold paper. This is what you're waking up to on the front page of the Standard this morning. Hustler agenda. It says, tax backseat as talks begin. That is what we have on the front page of the Standard this morning. Priorities. Whereas the Sufria has been the symbol of the recent protests by Kenyans demonstrating against the high cost of living. One from the two camps indicates the matter was not given serious attention, resulting in rows between the groups. And this story continues on page 6. Also, Kenyans begin to feel the heat of new taxes. From alcohol prices to cost of sending money using mobile platforms, the effects of the court decision on new taxes is beginning to be felt by all. And this is well laid out for you this morning on page 4 of the Standard today. Looking at excise duty on fees charged for money transfer services by cellular phone service providers, that will go up. Also, Fish Act introduces a 10% duty rate on imported fish and a new rate of 5 shillings per kilogram of imported sugar. On chamas, the act says income of members club or trade associations will not be taxable. This is expected to hit chamas hard. And we have Millicent Atieno here, who is painting jikos at Kibuye Market in Kisumu to earn her living. She's bound also to be adversely affected by these charges that is coming into play with the new Finance Act. And also, farmers expect bumper maize harvest. At least some good news there. That story on page 8, that is also bound to make sure that the price of maize is going down. Kenya Maize is out on Russia grain deal. Looking at that as well as on page 27. And every Monday, you have Health and Science magazine that really comes in handy for you. Pain of living with a blood disorder. You can read all about it, get all the wiser inside the Health and Science Pull-Out magazine with the Standard this morning. Also, from ovarian cancer to World Cup glory. All right, how she has managed to beat the odds to be on top of the world. That is the Standard. This is how it looks. Hustler agenda takes backseat as talks begins. Also, the Daily Nation. Dear Sugar, beta test is a flagger, and you have Dear Sugar as a splash this morning. Buying sugar is now leaving a beta test in the mouth of Kenyans as prices of the sweetener have hit a record high. But in a twin blow, the prices are set to rise even further in the coming days after the government introduced excess duty on sugar imports and temporarily suspended local milling. That is a story to want to follow on page 7 of the Daily Nation this morning. Let's zoom in on the illustrations here. We have sugar prices retailing at between 225 and 250 shillings per kilogram. Retailers are selling a 2-kilo packet of the sweetener at between 460 and 490 shillings. Last week, sugar millers in Western and Nyanza regions shut operations of an acute cane shortage, and that has also occasioned the importation of this sugar in the country. And the country will now rely on Sony Sugar, Transmara Sugar, Sukari Industries, and Kwale International Sugar Company Limited for sugar. Even as the Mumias sugar politics continue to, of course, simmer, we have the governor of Kakamega now raising accusatory fingers towards a Sarai company that has taken the management of Mumias Sugar right now, saying they're actually operating below capacity and they're not going the whole hog as far as value addition is concerned. The ethanol bit of it is not there, and the expansive over 5,000 hectares of land is not being utilized. Only 500 or to 600 hectares of land is being utilized right now. Now they're calling on the farmers to go back to, of course, sugar farming so that they can pump up the sugarcane volumes to make sure also that is operational. But Ryan also on the other side is saying that was not really part of the contractual agreement as far as ethanol and the cogen. Those are some of sugar terms that maybe are not intimately familiar with. But you can actually grab a copy of the Daily Nation to get all the wise as far as this is bound to affect you adversely. And maybe you can find alternatives of using sugar. On the sidebar, we have Indagasi under fire over his critique on Miseramugo University. Don draws the wrath of netizens as well as colleagues in the academia for article critical of fellow literature professor. This story continues on page 3. Now, hepatitis deaths to eclipse TB, HIV, and malaria. This is a warning from the World Health Organization. They're sounding the alarm on the current hepatitis infection trends, which shows that the disease now kills about 1 million people worldwide each year. That story continues inside the Daily Nation this morning. Let's see what on top we have here as the teaser. It says Ruto Raila clash on talks agenda. We have that story on page 4 and 5. President William Ruto and Azimio Chief Raila Odinga's camp have clashed over the terms of reference for talks initiated by the international community, with the opposition disowning a statement released by the government side and insisting that the high cost of living must be on the table. This story continues on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation, and that also will be a subject of discussion with the panelists. And we have also NAT, they're saying pairs our due or we won't mark exams. Teachers now threaten not once they will disrupt tests if they are not paid their 2022 arrears. We have that story continuing on page 2 of the Daily Nation this morning. People Daily is up next. Split over Ruto. Raila talks as key allies dig in. An elusive dialogue, it seems. Efforts by Nigerian ex-president Obasanjo rebuffed by Kenya Kwanza leaders, even as Azimio hardened their stance on issues to be discussed, threaten more protest. This story continues on page 4 of the People Daily this morning. You have an incident there of the different camps. Azimio chief, led by Raila Odinga, is addressing journalists at the Kalonzo Musyoka Command Center in Nairobi yesterday. And also down there we have President William Ruto with Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi, Kwale Governor Fatuma Achani, Samweni MP Faisal Abdallah Bader, and Mining Cabinet Secretary Salim Vuria, after an interdenominational church service at Ukunda Showground in Kwale County yesterday. That story continues on page 4 of the People Daily this morning. On top also, Courier's big delegation sparks new travel rules. Public Service Chief directs that officers should not exceed 45 days of travel in a year and will not have a team of more than 3 members. And this is what now is new as far as traveling of the civil servants is concerned, especially the cabinet secretaries, the principal secretaries as well. And all this is an effort just to pare down on the expenditure. An eye-popping figure that was coming from the CSS camp. This is Courier. Over 40 delegates, and this is what really now occasioned this particular new policy from government, especially on travel and the per diems, and also the length of travel, that it will not be exceeding more than 7 days. We've seen also some of his leaders going away, or even over 3 weeks as well, and that also has been adversely affecting the pockets of the government. Let's buckle down to some business, but before we head there, we have Taifa Leo popping up. Kimeturamba, that is a splash. Mahakama yaipa serikali ruhusa ya kuanza kutoza ushuru mpya, kesi ya kupinga sheria ya fedha ikiendelea. You have that story continuing on page 2 of Taifa Leo. Miongoni mwa ada mpya zitakazotozwa wa Kenya ni makato ya nyumba asilimia 16 ya bidhaa za mafuta, ushuru wa mapato kwa wanaopokea mshahara mkubwa, na ongezeko la kodi ya jumla ya mapato ya biashara. That is a story that you want to follow inside Taifa Leo this morning. Even as we buckle down to business, this is what we have as the splash today. How 72 billion shillings cash inflow put Kenya on dirty money watch. That is what we have here. Watchdog folds Kenya's fight against illicit cash. Agency flags large cross-border hard cash movement. And that story continues on page 2 of the People Daily this morning. Also, more trouble for KQ as Ethiopia fly Dubai allowed more flights. And that story continues on page 2 of the Business Daily. And masking firms winning state tenders hits Kenya IMF plans. And ESG reporting fraud among latest crimes to hit East Africa. Talk about greenwashing. More than half of East Africa or East African reported have been experienced, or let me go again. More than half of East Africans reported have experienced economic crimes, including sustainability reporting fraud in the last 2 years. A new report shows the 2022 PW's Global Economic Crime and Fraud Survey for Eastern Africa shows that 6 in 10 respondents have experienced economic crimes. That is the story you want to follow inside the Business Daily this morning. I shall be showing you what we have inside the other dailies as well. Daily Monitor in Uganda, The Citizen, and also we shall be looking at the editorial cartoons as well. Right now, let's buckle down to the stories that will set down also. It will set a tone for a conversation with our legislators who are here this morning. As I mentioned, we're holding court with Richard Onyonka, the Senator of Kisii. Also, we have a Member of Parliament, Kitui Central. This is Dr. Makale Mulu. We'll be joined by Wilson Susion and Danson Mugatana as well from Tana River. But for now, the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya leadership has confirmed a secret meeting between President William Ruto and the Azimio principal Raila Odinga that happened last Friday in Mombasa, saying it was a meeting to set the stage for talks. The leadership, who addressed the media in Odinga's current home in Nairobi, said the meeting was midwifed by the former Nigerian president Olusegun Obasanjo. As KTN's political affairs reporter Emmanuel Tona reports, the talks are facing turbulence even before kicking off, as the opposition called out their Kenya Kwanza counterparts for mischief in failing to include the issue of the high cost of living in the list of issues of discussions.
While responding to speculations about the details of the secret night meeting between President William Ruto and his political nemesis Azimio leader Raila Odinga, the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya leadership disclosed the behind-the-scenes intrigues in the meeting seeking to close ranks between the two top leaders that took place on Friday night at the coastal city of Mombasa, where the former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo chaired the meeting.
Indeed, there was a meeting chaired by His Excellency Honorable Obasanjo. And Baba accepted to appear in that meeting because of his respect for His Excellency Honorable Obasanjo. And as we have pointed out very clearly in our statement, that meeting did not conclude on any issues. It was a meeting to agree on when to hold the talks and how to hold the talks.
Reports indicate Odinga and President Ruto abandoned their troops for the night meeting that lasted 4 hours. The former premier had Friday morning met Obasanjo before flying to Mombasa after the Azimio interdenominational prayer service. However, even with the details coming out, Azimio has called out their Kenya Kwanza counterparts for mischief, deceit and sidestepping, with the opposition claiming the government was preparing to denounce Obasanjo's presence in the country as it remained non-committal on Tanzania's President Samia Suluhu's presence in the country 3 weeks ago.
They denied the presence of President Suluhu here a few weeks ago, and now they want to deny the presence of His Excellency Obasanjo.
This comes as the opposition also accused their counterparts of cheekily excluding the issue of the high cost of living from the list of issues of discussion, terming it as an act of bad faith.
We disown the statement by Honorable Gichungwa, as Mio had nothing to do with it. Its contents were those of Kenya Kwanza, their wish list.
We are not in the business of handshakes. We are not in the business of engaging on how to share power and positions. We shall engage on issues that are people-centric.
Azimio has listed several issues of dialogue, including the measures to arrest the runaway cost of living, repealing of the Finance Act 2023, and electoral reforms as top priority of the talks. Kenya Kwanza had listed 5 issues, including the creation of the office of the official leader of the opposition, entrenchment of the office of the prime cabinet secretary in the law, among the issues of discussion.
Our priority for discussion is the escalating cost of living, which has only got worse with the lifting of the conservatory order on the 2023 Finance Act last week.
Both sides are expected to name their respective members to the new extra-parliamentary 10-member dialogue committee, with the fate of the 14-member bipartisan talks committee now hanging in the balance. Sources indicate Na Kenya leader Martha Karua, alongside minority leader Opiyo Wandayi, will lead their team of negotiators, while Kenya Kwanza's 5 members will be chaperoned by the leader of the majority, Kimani Ichung'wah. The talks team will have 4 non-parliamentarians and 6 members of parliament. Emmanuel To, KTN News, Nairobi.
And President William Ruto now had meeting Azimio leader Raila Odinga over the impending dialogue with the former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo. Speaking in Kwale, Ruto said that he has already agreed with the opposition leader to never again engage in protests that might lead to bloodshed. Sentiments that were separately supported by his deputy Rigathi Gachagua. Ruto's lieutenants, however, seem to be reading from a different script as they urged Ruto to directly focus on serving Kenyans. And as our coast-based reporter Tobias Chanji tells us, the president has maintained that he will not engage the opposition on the cost of living.
It was during an interdenominational mass service at Ukunda town in Kwale County that President Ruto disclosed of meeting opposition leader Raila Odinga in Mombasa. Ruto admitted that he and Odinga agreed that violence, destruction of property will not be in the equation of the Republic of Kenya.
I have engaged our friends in the opposition, and we have agreed that as a nation, all leaders, past, present, and future, that violence, destruction of life, destruction of property, destruction of public property will not be in the equation of the politics of Kenya, in the governance of Kenya, and in any other way in the Republic of Kenya.
The head of state said that he was obligated that every Kenyan life, property, and safety is guaranteed, whether they supported him or not.
As a head of state, I am obligated to make sure that every Kenyan, whether they support my policies or not, that their life, their property is guaranteed. There is peace in the Republic of Kenya, and I have given a commitment.
On why the cost of living had not been included as part of the dialogue in the statement sent to newsrooms, Ruto stated that this is already being implemented and that there are programs that will deal with it.
And I have seen my colleagues asking in this discussion that we have agreed, where is the cost of living? And I want to tell them, we are already implementing the programs that will deal with the cost of living. I don't know why you cannot see.
Ruto's sentiments seem to be supported by his deputy Rigathi Gachagua, who pundits had gauged as a hardliner in the talks. Speaking in Kiambu, Gachagua welcomed the talks.
Welcome talks. We welcome non-violent ways of resolving conflicts. That we do. But we are on standby. Once beaten, twice.
This latest news, however, seemed to have caught allies and supporters off guard as they urged Ruto to instead focus on serving Kenyans.
If we want to lower the cost of living, it's not by going to sit in strange places, stroke with strange people. It is by having sound economic policies, increasing production, and helping the Kenyan farmer to produce enough food to put on our table.
The Chief Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi noted that Kenyans' problems will only be solved internally without associating the international community. Tobias Chanji, KTN News, Kwale County.
Now, a section of Azimio leaders want to, among other issues, repeal the Finance Act 2023, drop Azimio leaders' demonstrations-related cases, and commit to compensate those maimed during the demos before starting all the talks. Led by Siaya Governor James Orengo, the leaders say that this will instill confidence among Kenyans. This as Kenya Kwanza leaders from Western and Rift Valley insist the talks should only be about lowering the cost of living and not about positions. Alon Chonde has more.
Barely 24 hours after the publicization of the fruitful meeting between President William Ruto and Azimio leader Raila Odinga, chaperoned by former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo, to lay the roadmap for the bipartisan talks, and leaders are voicing their conditions. Siaya County Governor James Orengo now says President William Ruto should first repeal the Finance Act 2023, drop Azimio leaders' demonstrations-related cases, and stop the process of recruitment of IEBC commissioners if he is committed to the cause.
Ruto must stop the recruitment of IEBC commissioners. This is a condition precedent. We must go to talk when we know that there is an enabling environment for us to talk in a fruitful and concrete discussion that is going to yield results.
That consultation must happen at the apex level of leadership between Raila Amolo Odinga and William Ruto. Any other consultation where small people like Samatandi are engaged will not be trusted by the people of Kenya.
The Kenya Kwanza side also adamant that should the talks come to fruition, then the base must be addressing the cost of living and other issues affecting the common mwananchi and not sharing of positions.
Any talks that will happen from next week, the issues to be addressed are the following. 1, cost of living. 2, cost of living. 3, cost of living.
Sisi tunaomba rais wetu asiwe wa kudanganywa kuingia katika mazungumzo ya kugawana mamlaka, kwa sababu sisi tuliuza ajenda yetu kama Kenya Kwanza, na wale watu wetu walisikia ajenda hiyo na wakakubali na wakapigia mheshimiwa rais William Ruto kura ya kuwa rais. Kwa hivyo kusikue na mikora ingine ambayo inataka kuingia kwa serikali kupitia mlango wa nyuma.
Maongezi hayo yana focus kwa maneno manne. Ya kwanza, tumalize maneno ya maandamano. Ya pili, tupunguze gharama ya maisha. Ya tatu, tunataka create official opposition, leader of official opposition, na tena to create the office of Prime Minister.
Although Azimio leadership has expressed its commitment to partaking in the talks, they have distanced themselves from the Kenya Kwanza statement, which failed to capture the cost of living as an item of discussion. Hardliners in both camps have also been blamed as they threaten the journey towards a permanent truce, and thus a call has been made to the two leaders to ignore them.
Baba is not interested in the handshake. Baba anapigania mambo ya maisha, because he's actually fighting for the justice and the cost of living. Sio mambo na handshake. So the issue of having a conversation na rais wetu, that is a positive move, na sisi kama viongozi, we want to support ule msimamo wa Raila Amolo Odinga.
The clergy who have been vocal about the truce, calling on the political class to exercise caution as the process is a delicate one. Alan Ochanda, KTN News.
And elsewhere, we have religious leaders across the country led by the Anglican Archbishop Jackson Ole Sapit and President of the Baptist Churches Convention of Kenya, Reverend Bernard Buyer, calling on the cost of living to be included as a key agenda after the Kenya's government and the opposition coalition agreed to form a 10-member joint committee to resolve their differences. The clergy warned that the talks should not only focus on creation of more political positions, but factor in the high cost of living affecting Kenyans, or else the differences between the two parties will not end. Willie Lusigi has more.
As Kenyans await for the formulation of Joint Reconciliation Committee after Kenya Kwanza's government and opposition agreed to form a joint committee which aims to resolve their differences, religious leaders across the country led by the Anglican Archbishop Jackson Ole Sapit and the President of the Baptist Churches Convention of Kenya, Reverend Bernard Buyer, have supported the move.
And we're asking our leaders, can somebody see the worth of the baby to live other than leading the child to die? Are we going to compete until everybody's dead?
While speaking during the 100-year celebrations of SCK St. Stephen's Cathedral, Jogoo Road, the first Anglican church to be built in Nairobi, Sapit said it is important for the joint committee to factor in the high cost of living as one of the major agendas rather than focus on creation of political positions.
It's our prayer that our national leaders will take Kenya as bigger than the position they hold today.
Political leaders present affiliated to Azimio la Umoja warning that they will only accept the agreement of the joint committee if the top of the agenda will revolve around lowering the cost of living.
Kila kitu imeenda juu. Tukubaliane, watu waongee na waongee kwa ukweli. Hakuna mtu ambaye hataki Kenya. Kila mtu anataka amani na kila mtu anataka amani, kwa sababu amani, bila amani hatuwezi kumove. So mtu ambaye anajifua akifika Kenya ni yake. Hii Kenya si ya mtu bwana. Hii Kenya ni ya Kenya wote. Yesu ni nuru yangu.
At the Kenya Baptist College of Theology in Tigoni, Limuru, during the graduation of religious leaders who are pursuing theological training to curb fake religious leaders, the president of the Baptist Churches Convention of Kenya, Reverend Bernard Obuya, called for the same during the negotiations between Azimio and Kenya Kwanza, insisting that Kenyans want to know how soon will the cost of living go down.
We are still calling the president and the opposition to sit down and have dialogue. We need peace in this nation. Even with the current issue that we are going through a lot of hardship, without peace we cannot be able to move on.
Warning that attempts to create more political positions will not go well with Kenyans amid the current economic crisis.
But Kenyans are suffering. We need the things to go down so that the normal Kenyans can also enjoy being in this nation.
Wajir North Member of Parliament Ibrahim Sane has also agreed with political leaders who are calling for the Committee of Reconciliation between Kenya Kwanza and Azimio to factor in the high cost of living rather than focus on creation of more political positions.
Kenyans are not happy in some way, let me tell you, let me be honest. Taxing is high. The cost of living is high. Kenya Kwanza wants to listen to the hustlers, but not hired goons, not Baba's ultimatum. Baba lost, has no legitimacy. So let us give legitimacy to where it belongs.
The church also highlighting the importance of the government making it mandatory for all religious leaders to undergo theological training to curb fake preachers and avoid reoccurrence of what was experienced in Shakahola.
In this country, there is need for ministers of the gospel to be trained so that they can deliver the right gospel message, so that we do not have the kind of problems that we have seen in churches in Kenya, especially this time when we have the Shakahola stories.
Even Ababa go for training. What about theological training? We need to know about God, and so that we can know how to present God well before the people.
Willie Lusige, KTN News, Nairobi.
And separately, Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki has demanded that the opposition commit to a peaceful cause and not return to violence and terror, even as they embark on their request for mediation talks. Speaking at Matiru Prayer House in Manyata constituency, Embu County, at a fundraiser to build a permanent Catholic church, Kindiki maintained that leaders in opposition must denounce the violent protests that have led to loss of lives and destruction of properties that were witnessed during Azimio la Umoja demonstrations in different parts of the nation. He maintained that no politician from any political party in the country has the right to hold demonstrations that undermine peace and cause massive loss of lives and property.
Sisi ambao ni walinda usalama hatuna shida yoyote kama watu wa upinzani wanatoa maoni tofauti ya sera za kiuchumi, za kisiasa. Lakini kuna wale wamejificha katika siasa na haki zao ambazo ni haki za kikatiba, kuumiza wananchi wenzao na kuharibu nchi yetu. Tumejipanga kama walinda usalama kuhakikisha tumekabiliana na kushinda wakora wote na magaidi ambao wanajisingizia ati ni siasa wanafanya, ili hali ni uhalifu, wanaharibu uchumi wa Kenya, wanaharibu maisha ya watu, wanaharibu biashara za watu.
All right, and of course, in the interesting editorial cartoons that we do have in the dailies this morning, as we continue with our discussion with the panelists, looking at what Gams has also drawn. This is another, of course, handshake, so to speak. Looking at that, of course, editorial cartoon, right, that is being proffered there from the Azimio side, and also the Kenya Kwanza. You can see a strip of yellow and strip of blue as it is. And of course, there are also demands that are being put on the table. The headliners also, they're throwing their weight as well as far as these negotiations are concerned. And it's all about the cost of living. In the 1990s, we had the structural adjustment programs by the World Bank. And today, things are not dramatically different from that. We were the third world, still we are, but you can see how the seesaw has been ongoing. Developing countries, they're going with the word of cash there in the money bags. And still, who is on the other side of the seesaw is the developing countries as well. This is what GAMS had drawn as well. Looking at the people daily today and the catapult, which is in between, you have Wanjiko, dirty politics and the cost of high cost of living as well, adversely affecting us as it is right now. The question mark, we're caught in between, suffering. And gentlemen, look at the bigger picture. This is what we have the mediator now saying. This has been brokered by, or the bringing together of the two heads by the former president of Nigeria, Obasanjo. And let's talk about my housing tax. And you can see the political temperature has been rising, looking at that thermometer as it is there. And standing by with the fire extinguisher also has been, or it was, Suluhu Hassan, the president of Tanzania. And of course, you can see also Ruto is holding one of his bludgeoning gadgets there, and that we always see in the movies as well. And looking again at the Finance Act, who is carrying the Finance Act Day, you can see the taxpayer, which is personified as a donkey there, and also members of a judiciary holding court there after making the decision, determination. But Okiya Omtata is not rowing back. He has actually now moved a notch higher. He's filing a notification or a notice here at the Supreme Court to challenge the decision that was, of course, arrived at by the courts regarding the Finance Act. So we're bound to be seeing this playing out also in the coming weeks as well. And avoid words like handshake or nusu mkate. This is what we have advisors coming, of course, alighting for the plane there, telling Obasanjo. And we can see the heads are in the sands there as far as these talks are concerned. They don't want to listen. And Raila is pounding also on the ground as well. This is what has been drawn by Victor. And we have now Gado. And the slaying of this Goliath, which is corruption. We have Devin D sitting down there on the lap of Goliath with his sling tucked on his neck there, and says, listen, Goliath, cut me some slack here. I'm trying to revive the economy. Will we be able to slay this Goliath as it is? This is what Gado has run. But let's just begin with Richard Onyoka. Good morning.
Morning, Dipal.
Good to see you again. And we've had those stories as well, and we want just to begin with you. First of all, we had the religious leaders also talking about the training there, and I know this maybe was really right up your alley as well, because you're a member of the ad hoc committee on Shakahola investigation as well. You can tell us what has been the update on that particular committee, especially with the training of the clergies. That is the way to go? This is what the clergies are saying.
First of all, I'd like to say that I think the chairman of the ad hoc committee, Honorable Mugatana,
He's supposed to be here, and I can see a text from him. You know, the president was in his hood. Yeah, I can see they had a late, of course, State House dinner. Yeah. So he missed out the flight. He couldn't make it this morning. He sends his apology.
Yeah, I was saying that he's been quite reasonable, and I think it's because of his experience having been in Parliament for quite a while. You must include all the stakeholders, because this report is not meant to be judgmental. It is basically a report that is supposed to study the gaps that exist within our judiciary, the gaps which exist in terms of information, gathering information, bringing in that information to the relevant authorities, if you look at what the analysis has been, and this report is being written and being drafted, therefore I may not disclose all the details about what has been discussed, but one of the issues and one of the gaps that we've come up with is that there have been cases where some officers are saying government officials, the national intelligence had this information actually. Others have said it is the judiciary which has been lax. It is the judiciary that was releasing these people, even when we found them to be culpable, or even when we felt that something they were doing that was wrong. In fact, one of the most famous clips that I don't know that you ever saw it is where Aisha Juma was actually condemning this gentleman.
Before it erupted. Yeah.
Yes, before it erupted. And very many people said that the church had used some members of the fraternity of the religious organizations, whether they were churches or whatever, have been spending so much money because they have collected so much money to the extent that everything actually became compromised. In other words, the church has become as corrupt as our society is. So to me, I think by the members of the church, they are accepting and saying, yeah, let us be forward-looking. Let us meet and discuss the critical issues. Let us discuss how do you handle religious money. And let us be sincere about it. Should the tithe be taxed? Number two, should the government be able to know how much money every church is collecting? Not because they are going to be taxed, but if somebody is collecting 100 million shillings every week, for example, isn't it necessary that the government should know? It is. Not for any particular reason to have a vendetta or to judge religious organizations. Shouldn't the church make it possible that the government is aware, for example, how much real estate this church has? So that in terms of organizing and coordinating the events, in terms of preempting the shakaholas of this world and the things which were happening, I think it is good that we are now discussing this matter openly, and it is good that our committee, the other committee on Shakahola, is seized with good work. I believe that the report which will come out, the recommendations on what is to be done in terms of the financials, the legals, and all the other aspects that are going to make it possible that the Kenyan people don't have this disaster that we've been handling, and that is Shakahola. Because I believe the number of people who would be found to have been killed in that area is definitely going to be more than 500. Yes.
All right. Okay, let's hear from Wilson Susion, or a bit on, not really on Shakahola, but maybe on the academia bit, because we can see there's a interesting development as well, where we have the Kenya secondary school heads and also Kupet as well. They're joining forces and they're saying, you know, maybe we should consider the closure of schools earlier than August the 12th because of the issue of capitation. So they are not able to
really
sustain.
Really, it's not about capitation. It's about the poverty prevailing with the households. The portion of fee payment by the households is at the lowest level across the country. Yeah, doing a spot check across schools. Information reveals that parents are no longer able to pay their obligation, particularly on food, feeding programs, and other apportions. And it's a challenge. And with delays in remission of 3 days secondary, then you can be very sure it is difficult to run schools. With these hard economic times, the hard-hit entities are learning institutions, and that is why the idea of closing schools earlier to avoid catastrophes is an option prevailing in schools. But that as it may, the challenges bedeviling education have been systemically caused by leadership and poor policies over time. The Presidential Working Party on Education and Reforms, hopefully they are done with the report, and it will be exciting to see the findings and the submissions they will make in the next couple of days. That will give government and ministry opportunity to implement and engage in reforms of recoursing education so that Kenya can deliver equitable quality education, particularly through the public, because public education and education is a public good, and it must be good through the public institutions. That is what really we should extremely focus on. A lot of things have been done, even as the Presidential Working Party works, because under the terms of reference, it was supposed to report to the President every 60 days. The reason why it had to report was to be able to take stock of the milestones and also to enable government take decision based on those findings with time. One is domiciling grade 7 in the primary schools, which has been undertaken, but it's coming with a lot of challenges: teacher shortage, lack of resources.
Thank you.
And the other one is reorganizing the funding model of higher institutions.
All right,
but you know, Dibal, our universities were shutting down because of poor financing model and neglect over the years. But from the Presidential Working Party report, and the President has accepted to raise funding of public institutions at higher level from 54 billion to 84 billion.
Thank you.
And model funding.
I wanted just to butt in on the issue of
conducted through students.
Thank you. I know you can give me the whole shebang on the academic, but I just wanted you to slice on the issue of this development that it is right now. You say there is no crisis as far as capitation is concerned, and the students are not really underfunded.
Schools, it's not a question of students not being underfunded. Remember, it's not 100% payment by government. There are other responsibilities meant for family, for households, particularly feeding. If you're talking about a school of 2,000 students, because our schools are over-enrolled beyond the ordinary numbers that we've always known. And these students, their primary service is feeding and other basic requirements. And this depends solely on the household, not the government. What government pays is for tuition. But what households will always pay is for feeding and other basic services.
Okay.
And
thank you.
In a situation where fees payment is very low, then you can expect chaos in schools.
Thank you. All right, let's see from Honorable Makali as well. Good morning. I've not heard from you as well since you came, and you've gone through the paper as well. You can tell us what is happening in Kitui Central before we take a short break, then we embark on matters at hand as far as the negotiations are concerned.
Yeah. Good morning, Dibal. Good morning, colleagues, and good morning, viewers. Kitui Central, we are doing fine. I was actually there over the weekend, and on Friday we were official opening of our agricultural show and the trade fair. And I can tell you, things are working out well in Kitui Central. Even the county headquarters, that's where most of the county activities are being conducted from. And Governor Malombe seems to be starting on the right track. We are happy as a county.
So this is your maiden agricultural show? Or
yeah, this was
okay.
This was after he left in 2017, that's the time Governor Ngilu took over. During Governor Ngilu's tenure, we didn't have agricultural shows. So this was like a restart of this important activity. And we could say our people were really excited. It's like they were missing the show because people were to travel all the way to Machakos to come and see what is happening. But I can tell you for sure, when we went there on Friday, because that was now the official opening of the show, our people were excited, very good exhibitions all over the place. A lot of learning from what was being exhibited by either the traders in town and our farmers, and people were really happy. And we could see that with that kind of now start, this being the first year of Governor Malombe, most of us, and those of us who have a lot of experience in development, we could see now he's actually on the right track. And if he continues like that, our county is likely to do very well. So I was very happy over the weekend when I saw what was happening. But all said and done, we are now harvesting after the rains. We got some good harvest, not as much as my friend would have gotten from their side, but we got some good harvest. Our people, some regions of Kitui County, we got some good harvest. Others are still didn't get a lot of harvest. But just right on what Sosion is saying, the matter of capitation, I think Sosion is running away from the fact that the issue of the cost of living is a major issue, and it informs capitation. You know what the teachers are saying, in very simple terms, is that you have given us money to take care of 1, 2, 3, based on rates which were applicable last year, and they can't be applicable today based on the cost of living. And that's why you see this matter of cost of living becoming such a central matter that unless as a country we discuss it and appreciate the implication of high cost of living in an economy, we are going to go round. But the issue of payment is still another problem. But that is also tied to the cost of living. Because if you are a parent, you want to get food first before you think about education. So if you can't feed your family, more likely you will not pay fee.
Indeed.
So this is really a very, when you put it, it's like a very complex matrix, which people must look at to understand what is happening. Actually, in many economies, and that's why we were saying, earlier in the bow, that if there was a way this country could just address the cost of living, when we started talking about it on this table.
Right. Could you just address it on the other side of a break? Because my music is up right now. We need to take that short break.
Let's take it after we come.
Of course, when we circle back, we shall look at that. The Finance Act as well. As I've mentioned earlier, Okiya Omtata is upping his ante as it is, now going to the Supreme Court to challenge this particular decision that was, of course, determined by the court. Will he have a headway? That's the probing question. Are we out of the woods yet? We don't know. But as we circle back, we delve into that and other matters as well. You're watching Standpoint.